E360 TV proudly presents messages of inspirational stories. Live streaming now to millions of devices, including Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, YouTube Live, Facebook Live. With your host, Donna, producer and host, Jim Grant, producer and host, along with Michaela Vidal, administrator and host, and Gaia Ginwa Balconi Wada, editor-in-chief.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Messages of Inspirational Stories. Jim, we're Monday, and I am so excited about this week. We are talking about the lost art of verbal communication.
Yeah, when it comes to communication, ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot to that. A lot of it's been lost, not only in not only in speaking, but also in the written word, even body language. I mean, we're going to be covering all of that this week. And last week we had a wonderful show on the lost art of storytelling. Oh my goodness gracious.
And we wanted to do a back-to-back because they really go hand in hand.
Yeah, because if you're not being able to communicate your story, you're dead in the water.
Right.
That's basically it. And before we get this thing kicked off, we're going to talk about some holidays today, you know, the National Day. And
Jim, go for it.
Number one on the list is World Listening Day. Isn't that an effective part of it?
Maybe that's next week's show.
Well, being a good communicator means you're also a good listener.
It means you're a good listener before you're a communicator.
Yeah, you're right. It certainly does. And it's very, very important, not only what you want to say, but listen to the response that you're getting. That's very, very critical because that will give you the information you need to be able to communicate. Mm-hmm. And the next one I know is very near and dear to you. This is the Global Hug Your Kids Day.
Oh, I wish I could hug my kids more, being as they're out of state, or, you know, we're out of state from each other. So, you know, hugging your kids is, in my opinion, one of the best medicines out there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Donna, you want to take the next one and share it with us?
Well, I would, but I do not have it up in front of me, sir.
You don't? Okay.
No.
All right. All right. That's the best excuse that we've got in the house. How about that?
And it's an honest one.
Yeah. That's the one thing too about whenever you always be honest, because people appreciate that with all the things that we do and we need to pick up and move on and all that, honesty is the big thing. Here's one thing that I know very little about, but it is the National Caviar Day, which is obviously a delicacy, and it's fish eggs. Have you ever had caviar?
I have never had caviar.
Neither have I. But today is a National Caviar Day, and I'm fish eggs. I like to see the little fishes hatch. Of course, say the same thing about chicken eggs, right?
Right. Okay.
Oh my goodness. And this is for some of you guys out there. This is the National Get Out of the Doghouse Day. And you know, guys, many times that's self-inflicted because you're communicating too well from the mouth.
Right.
You really are. And sometimes you need to listen, another form of communication, to be able to understand why she is feeling the way she is, why she may say some of the things that she says. And remember, when it comes to an argument, Donna, we've talked about this before. When it comes to an argument, when two people are arguing, I don't care if it's husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, the two friends, whatever, it doesn't matter. They're not trying to solve the issue.
Right.
Both of them are trying to do what, Donna?
Win their point of view. Win their point of view.
And all that does, folks, is just put fuel on the fire. It really does.
Well, I love this next one. It's Perfect Family Day.
Mm.
And I think that is absolutely beautiful, but I think it's more important to say we're all perfectly imperfect day
Yes.
for the
Yes.
family, because there is no such thing as a perfect family.
Mm-mm. No
None
way.
of us are perfect. So,
Mm-mm.
enjoy what you have and um, relish in the fact that you're perfectly imperfect.
Oh, yeah. And Donna, I tell people, when we think about reasoning in our minds, all we got to do is go look back for the recorded history and biblical history of Adam and Eve. Eve was tempted, as we all know in the story, and that was not the problem. The problem was she started reasoning in her mind how good that fruit looked, how beautiful it was, how tasty it must be, and it would make her wise. Now, if she made a biggest blunder on planet Earth by reasoning in her mind, what does that say about us reasoning in our minds? So we are human, we are imperfect, and it's okay to be imperfect. It really is. Because think about it. Just stop and think about this for a moment. Donna, would you want your kids to be perfect robots?
Oh, good Lord, no.
That'd drive you crazy.
It would.
I mean, look at your cats. Each one of them are different. She lives in
Right?
a cat house.
I do. And it's
Uh-huh.
funny because, the three girls are all blood sisters and
Mhm.
the same litter, everything, and absolutely complete different personalities.
Mhm.
Little Glock, who comes up on my lap almost all the time when we're doing a show, she is the only two people she will associate with, period, is my
Mhm.
husband and myself.
Yeah.
Somebody could be staying in the house for 2 weeks
Mhm.
and they might, and I say might, get a glimpse of her one time.
Yeah.
She will
She's not.
hide.
Yeah, her attitude is, I'm not here for those people. Get that riffraff out of my house.
Yeah, she is not sociable. Let's put it that way. But that, Bullet makes up for all of that.
Oh, yeah.
He's
And that's
very
what
sociable.
and that's what makes us love our kids and our pets and each other,
Right.
because we're so perfectly imperfect. That's, some of us have a warped sense of humor. Some of us have, they could, let's say that they were limited in that department.
Or a
When,
very dry sense of humor.
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. My
My,
dad had a very dry sense of humor.
my
Gaia's got a dry sense of humor.
Gaia has a really dry sense of humor. She'll say something and you're not really paying real close attention. And about a minute and a half, 2 minutes later, you start laughing, going, "Oh, dang, that was funny."
And Gaia's probably saying, Mom, please don't be talking about me on TV.
Right? Shut up, Mom.
Oh,
It's a mother's prerogative.
that's like my granddaughter, Michaela. She has a warped sense of humor, very lively sense of humor. And I was teasing her one day. I said, "How did you get that warped sense of humor?" She says, "Hello, you're my grandfather." So
True enough,
I'm proud of that.
right? And there's Glock's tail.
Oh, there he is. Glock says, "Hey, I heard my name mentioned. I'm going to be a star again on TV. Who are these people here, huh?"
Right?
Oh, my goodness. And when it comes to effectively communication, Donna, before the show, we were talking very much about, effective communication. And I'm going to let you kick it off because this is so very important.
It really is. So we have some tips that's going to help you avoid misunderstandings and grasp the real meaning of what's being communicated, and
Mhm.
will improve your work and personal relationships. And, that's what it's all about. So it's more effective communication, folks, is more than just exchanging information. It's
Mhm.
about understanding the emotion and the intentions behind the information,
Mhm.
as well as being able to clearly convey a message. You need to also listen in a way that gains the full meaning of what's being said and makes the other person feel heard and understood. Now,
Mhm.
that is key.
Mhm.
So when talking with someone and they're talking, you truly need to listen with everything you are.
Mhm. That's so true, Donna, because people want to be understood. They want to be heard and understood. So when you ask for feedback, you've got to be open-minded. And sometimes that hurts, doesn't it, Donna?
It does. But, one of the ways that you can do a little tip that you can do when you're talking with someone and they're explaining something, you can literally say, okay, Jim, let me see if I understood what you're saying correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hit a few of the highlights. Mm-hmm. And that way, if there is anything that was not clearly said from them and interpreted by you, then you can get that out in the open and that misunderstanding cleared out of the way.
Yeah, because a lot of times I've been in a lot of meetings, and especially in the military, and you get up there and just brief everybody. And then the next day or later on that same day, someone will say, well, I thought we were going to do it like this. Mm-hmm. That's a breakdown in communication, because good, effective communicators will ask the question. And that question is, are there any questions? Is everybody clear on everything? And then go over the valid points of what was covered in that.
The bullet points.
Yeah. So we're all in agreement. We're going to do A, B, C, D. Any other questions? Make it clear. Ask questions, because if you don't ask questions, sometimes people are too shy to speak up. They may feel dumb.
Right.
And it's very, very clear. And also, this is one thing that I learned being an NCO in the military. I would say if anybody wants to see me personally right after this meeting, I'll be here for a few minutes. And that would give the shy ones an invitation to come and talk to me.
Right.
And because some people don't want to speak in front of a crowd. They just don't want to. They're too embarrassed.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So the next part of this is kind of interesting too, Jim. It says effective communication sounds like it should be instinctive. But all too often, when we try to communicate with others, something goes astray. We say one thing and the other person hears something else. And misunderstandings, frustration, and conflicts ensue. So that can cause problems, just like you talked about. People aren't hearing it the right way. So for many of us, communicating more clearly and effectively requires learning some important skills. Whether you're trying to improve your communication with your spouse, your kids, your boss, coworkers, all these skills can deepen your connection to others and build greater trust and respect and improve teamwork, problem solving, and overall social and emotional health.
You're exactly right. And Donna, there might be someone out there saying, okay, what's really stopping me from communicating effectively? I mean, I think I express myself well, and, I just, they're kind of lost.
Right.
And so what would you say was what's stopping them from communicating effectively?
I think one of the things is seeing yourself, this is just my opinion, but seeing yourself as you know it all.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That because you're speaking, you know it all. And we don't. I mean, the bottom line is we just don't. And there's no way that we can. So understanding that not only you don't know it all, but neither does anybody else.
That's right.
And when you take that humble approach and give yourself and everybody else grace, it makes the message easier to get through. I mean, Jim, you and I have both been at speaking events, conferences, etc., where somebody gets up and speaks and immediately you know that they think they know it all and they're so full of themselves. All you want to do is get up and go get a cup of coffee.
You're exactly right, Donna, because remember this, ladies and gentlemen, as smart as Donna and I am, we don't know everything. The moral of that story is no one knows what you think they know. And that includes us, and we're honest about it. I mean, I don't know everything, and sometimes Donna will say some things. I go like, "Wow, I never didn't think about that," or that sort of thing. But
vice versa.
That's where good communication comes in, because good communication is really electrifying.
It is, and it's also built on trust.
Hmm. It really is. And you get the other person talking, and then both of you can be on the same wavelength.
Mhm.
Really
Mhm.
can. And understanding when someone is where someone's coming from, that's critical too. And
It is.
that's where asking information, being open-minded, getting feedback. Because I guess we all can recall times in our life when we have an idea and someone says, "Well, what about this?" And they come up with a better idea. That's happened between Donna and I many times. Sometimes I come up with an idea and she'll give me her opinion. I'm like, wow, that's a better idea than what I had, you know?
Well, and sometimes we both start off with an idea and we think it might be a good idea, but it
Mhm.
really isn't, and it evolves into the most excellent idea.
That's where the energy comes in we talk about. And that's one of the things I'm going to give Bill's book a plug here right quickly. The 7 Levels of Truth. What Bill focuses in on that is the inner game. What's going on inside of you
Right.
instead of all this confusion and stuff. And that's a starting point. That's a great book. We both have copies of it, and we highly recommend it because we know Bill, and we know the value that will give you. You can find it on Amazon, and we're not paid for any advertisements from Bill because Bill's a friend of ours. We believe in paying it forward.
Right.
That's another blessing. And when you do that, you bless others. Guess what will happen?
You get
You,
blessed.
there you go. You
You
heard it
get
straight from Donna.
So stress and out of control emotion. That's a big
Oh
one, isn't it, Jim?
man.
So when you're
It,
stressed or emotionally overwhelmed, which in my world means our energy is out of balance, okay,
mhm,
that you're more likely to misread other people,
mhm,
send confusing or off putting nonverbal signals, and lapse into unhealthy knee jerk patterns or behaviors. So,
mm,
to avoid conflict and misunderstandings, you can learn how to quickly calm down before continuing a conversation. So, if I may interject really quickly, one of the things I've learned to do in my life is if I have something going on, business, personal, doesn't matter, and it's something that's really preying on my mind, and I might be a little agitated about it, and then something else comes up that I need to deal with, and it may not be imminent, like I have to deal with it this moment. And I think about it and I'm getting a little upset about it, right? And then I step back and I say, now, wait a minute. You're dealing with this, and this is forefront, and you're putting energy from this issue into this that doesn't need to be there,
mhm.
right? And
Exactly.
so if I were to react on it and go off of that emotion, I could screw everything up by putting
Mhm,
misplaced energy and emotion that does not belong there.
mhm,
So I give myself basically a checks and balance.
mhm. That's an excellent point and very, very good point for people. And part of good communication is also listening.
Oh,
How many
that's
times have you seen people that's in a meeting and they're busy checking their phones? That's a lack of focus. And when you suffer from a lack of focus or when you're experiencing a lack of focus, you can't effectively communicate when you're multitasking. They talk about multitasking a lot. Don't even think about that. That's a train wreck because you can only do one thing at a time. That's like inhaling and exhaling at the same time when it comes to multitasking. You're
well,
either inhaling or exhaling. Go ahead.
right. The only other thing I want to say on that, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate to that,
Oh,
is
okay.
if you are giving a speech, a talk, whatever, and people are looking at their phones, you need to pay close attention.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
have not grabbed, right. You
there's a
have not.
disconnect there.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
you have not grabbed their attention. And so, one of the things that is really excellent to do in a situation like that, even if it's not in what you're prepared to read or talk about, but it's leading up to it, ask a question.
Oh, yeah, I'm
Say
glad you
how,
said that.
say how many people here, I got a question, I need a raise of hands. How many people here have ever experienced such and such? Show,
Mm-hmm.
raise your hand. They will stop what they're doing and they will raise their hand or they will look up, and then you've got their attention. Then it is up to you to keep their attention because you're boring them.
When I was an instructor and I'd see people, kind of, wandering off a little bit, they knew, because this is a slick trick to pull. Let me ask you a question. Let's see here. And I'd ask the question, and I'm looking around. I'm not asking for a show of hands, and I'll look in this direction, and the other person may be in the opposite direction. And I'll say, Mary, give me an answer on that, please.
Right.
Because when I ask that blanket question, let me ask you a question, then I ask the question, they know I'm going to call on somebody.
Right.
So that automatically will tune them in. That's a little trick that I learned after 12 years from my 12 years of being an instructor. And that's a great way of getting people to dial back in immediately.
Also, another way, if you are communicating in front of people, one of the ways that will get their attention is don't stand still. And I'm not saying, of course, flop around like a chicken, but I am saying walk. And you do it in a rhythm that is not going to put them to sleep. But your body language and the energy you use will bring them in or push them away.
Also, too, that's a very good point, because when you walk around slowly, you walk to the right, walk to the left, maybe walk in the center if it's if it's available. Your voice changes.
Correct.
And that's a big plus to the audience. It really is, especially if you're interesting and you got a good story and you're communicating well. So you can see how this is all tying together. And when it comes to, let me finish up here. When it comes to lack of focus, don't think you can multitask, because that can really distract you. What you want to focus on is that I'm going to communicate effectively as far as speaking and listening. And I'm going to avoid all these distractions because I need to stay focused. That's the key, because lack of focus will rob you of, it's just, you just get wandered off and lost in the woods. And Donna was talking about a little bit about body language. I know you want to say something about that, don't you, girl?
Yeah. Well, nonverbal communication should reinforce what's being said, right? Not contradict it. So if you say one thing, but your body says something else, your listener is likely going to feel that you are being dishonest. And then they're done right there. They're done. So, for example, you can't say yes while shaking your head no. It just, it doesn't make sense. The other thing that, because we were talking about, being focused and not stressing out. When you are giving a talk, a speech, whatever it is, in front of people, and you're a little bit nervous and you make a mistake, it's okay. And I'll tell you why. Because nobody else in that room but you knows what's on your paper.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Don't stress about it. Don't freak out and go, oh my gosh, that isn't even what I wrote.
Yeah. Also,
that's right by it.
Yeah, also, too, there's been many times when I've been given a class, I have an LO lesson plan. And in the heat of the battle, you might say, I will skip over something that was important. And when I catch myself, I drive on. Then at the end, I will say, oh, yes, folks, there's one more thing I really need to cover with you, and go back over that point. That way, only you know that you skipped over something or you omitted something, and you did not break the flow of information. That's the main thing.
And that's huge, because if you break that flow and you stop yourself because you forgot something, the disconnect you're going to have with your audience is going to be huge, and you have lost them. And let me tell you, from practice and years of experience, that is hard to regain, isn't it, Jim?
It certainly is. It certainly is. Because I tell you, it's you just got to be make sure you show up is what we used to say. Just make sure you show up. That means all of you, and be able to communicate your message effectively. And Donna, you hit on it a little bit more. How about that negative body language? Is that important?
Oh, negative body language is super important because, you know, we have so much negativity in this world that we don't need anymore. So if you disagree or dislike with what's being said, you might use negative body language to rebuff the other person's message, such as, this is a big one, crossing your arms, right? Avoiding eye contact, tapping your feet. You know, this is one when people look at their hands. So you don't have to, right? You don't have to agree with them or even like what's being said, but to communicate effectively and not put the other person on the defense, it's really important to avoid sending negative signals. And remember that just because you don't agree doesn't mean that you can't be an adult.
That's right. Be mature enough to agree to disagree. And with negative body language, one of the things that drives people in the audience or if you're on a Zoom call or whatever, is for people to be talking to you like this and looking over here, or if they're on a public arena, looking up at the ceiling and looking over their heads. And another one is always looking at one group of people. You go to your notes, you come back, you look at the same group of people. And the folks over here are saying, hey, we're here too.
Why are we being ignored?
Yeah. And I call it the 10, 2, 12. I mean, 10, 2, 12, you know.
And one of the other things you can do is when you are giving a speech, if it's in a group of a large body of people, stop and say, hey, you folks in the back, can you hear me okay? That gets everyone's attention, and it gives a little jolt, and say, I just want to make sure that you all can hear me. Am I speaking loud enough?
When it comes to being an effective communicator, the very first skill that most people talk about is become an engaged listener. And Donna, I think that's important because if you can listen, then you can deliver what you've heard, what you've read, that sort of thing. But if you're if you're talking, you're not learning anything.
Right.
But if you're listening.
We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, Jim.
That's right. And I'm going to shut mine and use my 2 ears and listen to her talk about that skill, if you would, please.
So when you're communicating with other people, you know, we often focus on what we should say. However, understand that effective communication is less about talking and more about listening. Listening well means not just understanding the words or the information being communicated, but also understanding the emotions the speaker is trying to convey. And there's a big difference between between engaged listening and simply listening. When you really listen, when you're engaged with what's being said, you'll hear the subtle intonations in someone's voice that tell you how that person is feeling and the emotions they're trying to communicate. When you're an engaged listener, not only will you better understand the other person, you'll also make that person feel heard and understood, which can build a stronger, deeper connection between you.
You're absolutely right about that, because when it comes to communicating with others, so many times we get so caught up in this is what I want to say. And, you know, when you're listening, it may not be verbal. It could be the body language too, because I've been in classes and I've been in front of people when I'm speaking and I see them lean forward. That's a huge positive plus. But on the other side, if I'm speaking and they start leaning back, they're saying, I've had enough of you. I'm out of here. You know, So that's why it's important. And you got to be aware of that. And there's one other thing I like to throw in here. This is a nicety to know. Donna and I are not going to charge you any extra for this today. But use the power of the pause.
Big one.
Because quietness really, why is it quiet? You know?
Right.
Especially like, let me ask you a question. And then you can look like you're deep in thought. What if, and then ask your question. That wakes people up. It breaks the monotony. It draws people in, because silence, if you're sitting somewhere in a room or a Zoom room or wherever, and you're looking at your phone, and all of a sudden, let me ask you a question, and there's silence, you'll look up because, hey,
What'd I miss?
yeah, what's going on here? Did I get, did I lose my internet? Or what's this person doing?
Well, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just going to say the power of the pause is your friend. Use it.
It is. And it's a critical one. It helps so much. One of the other things you can do, and you reminded me of it when you were talking about when people lean in or when they lean back. Mm-hmm. But when you're speaking to a group of people, and if you think they're starting to drift, what you do is you start your sentence out a little louder, and then you lean in and then slowly lower your voice a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then pause and mm-hmm. come back. And I guarantee mm-hmm. you, they'll mm-hmm. be alert like that.
Yeah.
And they'll kind of lean in with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you're, let me throw this in there. If you're at a job interview, mirror and match. Mm-hmm. Or if you're on a business call, mirror and match the person with you. If the person is wanting to express a point and they lean on their desk or something like that, don't lean on their desk, but put your hands on your knees and lean forward. And when they just mirror them, if they move back a little bit, you move back a little bit.
And you don't want to do it in such a way, though, that it makes it look like you're making fun of them. No.
There's an art to it. I mean, just be sincere. They lean forward, you lean forward. It's very, very simple. And here's another nicety to know. Whenever you're out, and this is a nice way of communicating that you're the kind of person they want to talk to or listen to or maybe do business with. If someone offers you a cup of coffee, take it because it's a gift. But what I would tell people, just a half a cup, please. And see, that way, with a half a cup, you can act like you're drinking it if you're not a coffee drinker or whatever. And when they go get the cup, they don't think about the cup was full when they poured it. Mm-hmm. They see that you drank some. Because if you do not accept the gift from someone, or someone says, later on after this meal, let's mean you get together. Okay. Give them, if they ask you, give them some time. It might be worth it. It may not, but at least be approachable. You're communicating that you're a genuine, interested person. That's huge.
Absolutely.
I don't know why I wanted to throw that in, but I figured there might be somebody out there. That's following the energy when things come to you. That comes from a higher source than I am. That's for sure.
Absolutely. So one of the other things in communicating and being an engaged listener is you also experience a process that lowers stress and supports physical and emotional well-being. If the person you're talking to is calm, for example, listening in an engaged way will help to calm you. Mm-hmm. Similarly, boy, I can't say that one right today. If the person is agitated, you can help calm them by listening in an attentive way that makes the person feel understood. Mm. So if your goal is to fully understand and connect with the other person, listening in an engaged way will often come naturally. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't, try the following tips. The more you practice them, the more satisfying and rewarding your interactions with others will become.
Mm-hmm. You're exactly right. And let me give you an example here. When someone gets agitated, you should keep calm. A classic example is when someone buys a product in the store and it's defective or whatever, and they take it back, the person automatically feels like they've got to plead their case. I bought this here and yada, da, 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 and all that. And most people they want to shut them up.
Right.
Because they don't want that negativeness. The thing to do is take a deep breath and relax. Let them say what they want to say, let the calmness. And then you ask one simple question, and that diffuses everything.
Right.
You just say, I understand where you're coming from. What would you like me to do about it today?
How can I resolve this for you?
Yeah. Just whatever you're comfortable with, because that tells them that you understand them, you appreciate them, and you're going to make it right. And that takes everything down. And Donna, when someone, if you came into a store and you didn't know me from Adam's House Cat, and you bought something in the store, and I'm the guy at the service counter, and you said, yeah, I bought this thing. I saw it on TV. It's advertised. This thing's a piece of junk. I mean, this thing broke and da, 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 da. And if I said, I understand how you feel. I don't blame you. What would you like me to do about it today? Give you a refund, or you want another one? How would that make you feel?
Validated.
Yes.
Validated.
And how would you feel about me as a person?
I would feel great. I would be like, this man understood me. He heard me. He asked what he could do to help resolve the issue at hand. And because of that, he's earned my loyalty.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So whatever product or service that you're offering, if someone is dissatisfied, just say, I understand. I'm sorry that happened. And how would you like me to make it right for you today? Whatever verbiage you're comfortable with, but let it come from the heart. If it doesn't come from the heart, forget it. Throw it out the window.
And, and understanding that when you can do that quickly with people who tend to have a little more negative energy and want to go on and on about it, understand that it is, first thing to understand, it is not a reflection of you.
That's right. It has nothing to do with you.
No, it is a reflection of the turmoil that's going on in their life. And unfortunately, we see it all the time. Everyone's seen it where somebody just goes off on somebody when things are, getting crazy. They just lose their stuff and they take it out on somebody. And, we've all been in that position, or probably most of us. And the quicker you can say, wow, I so understand why you're feeling the way you are. You have just validated them.
Yeah.
Completely. And what you're doing is you're taking the wind out of their sail. So when you say, I totally understand why you feel that way, what are they going to say? No, you don't.
Yeah, exactly. And
if you say, gosh, I'd be really mad too.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you would? Okay.
Yeah. And if you just say, I'm sorry that happened, something like that, because chances are the fuel they're adding to the fire came from someone else, and they can't burn it over there. They're going to burn it in front of you.
Right. That's a good way to put it, Jim. It's a really good way to put it.
Been there, done. I mean, I haven't been the person that did it, but I've been the person that's been done too, So it's kind of like that old proverb. Sometimes where you stand depends on where you were forced to sit.
Right. So, Jim, I'd like to, we're not super close on the end of time, but I'd like to get into some tips to become an engaged listener. So one of the things is you want to focus fully on the speaker. So if you can't listen in an engaged way, if you're constantly checking your phone or thinking about something else, so you need to stay focused on the moment-to-moment experience in order to pick up the subtle nuances and important non-verbal cues in a conversation. And if you find it hard to concentrate on some of the speakers, try repeating their words over in your head. It'll reinforce their message and help you stay focused. Now, this is one I love. Favor your right ear. As strange as it sounds, the left side of the brain controls the primary processing centers for both speech comprehension, and emotions. Since the left side of the brain is connected to the right side of the body, favoring your right ear can help you detect the emotional nuances of what someone is saying.
I'm trying to connect my brain here. That's what I was doing. I wasn't speaking sign language or anything. I was, because it's interesting the way you put that, Donna, because it's so true, because we get so caught up in the roar of the left side.
Right.
Yeah, that's just, we miss a lot. We lose a lot.
We do. And it's funny, I'm right-handed, but I hold the phone on my left ear.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I hold it on my right ear, it feels weird to me.
I'm same way.
Don't know why.
And I did that until God invented earbuds, But yeah, I'm the same way on that. It's interesting like that. And
one of the other things that you need to do for a tip is avoid trying to redirect the conversation to your concerns.
Oh.
Right? And I'm sure we've all been there by saying something like, "Oh, if you think that's bad, let me tell you what happened to me."
Oh, yeah.
Listening is not the same as waiting for your turn to talk. You can't concentrate on what someone's saying if you're forming what you're going to say next.
Mm-hmm.
Often the speaker can read your facial expression and know your mind's elsewhere.
I got to share a funny story. It happened to me and Don McGrath there in Phoenix, Arizona, at the place not where we met, but you remember on we'd have the hors d'oeuvres and the things out there. Okay. Don and I are in line. And this guy comes up and he starts talking. And I said, yeah. And I handed him a plate. That was my body language. Here, have a plate. I'm trying to be nice, but I'm trying to give him a subtle hint.
Right.
Over his head. And I said, yeah, me and Don we're going to get something to eat. You want to get in line? Go ahead and get in front of me. And he just keeps yakking and yakking and yakking and yakking. I am not making this up. I wish I was. Honest to Pete. I kept looking over at the buffet area there, and I said, we need to get something to eat. And Don's kind of like, yeah. And this guy's in front of us, in between us, just yakking. And you know what? The food, everybody got their food and got all picked up and everything. The only two people that was concerned about getting something to eat was me and Don, because we had Yacker Jones in front of us. He could not take a hint.
Right.
That is pitiful. And Don told me later, he says, let's avoid that guy from now on. He said, when I see him coming, I'm going to head the other way. I said, I'm with you. I said, I'll tell you what, you go one way and I'll go the other way, and I hope he follows you.
Right. And people who do that are, like you say,
disrespectful.
Very, very disrespectful, but they're all about themselves and buttering their own bread. And, when you listen to somebody, body language and their tonality is huge.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking with someone or they're talking with you and they say something like, they look at you like this. And to me, that's posturing, saying, I am so much better than you. I know so much more than you. Mm-hmm. And that is an instant turnoff.
Yes.
It is an instant turnoff. And the other thing is people want their name to be heard. Mm-hmm. So work really hard on names. And if you're talking with people and asking questions and they have name tags on, walk through the audience and say, hey, Carol. Mm-hmm. Hey, Joe. Bring their name up.
One thing that I learned, and I learned this from aggravation, not the game aggravation, me aggravating myself, okay? And that is when I'd meet someone like, hi, George, or hi, Sue, however, and I couldn't remember their name. Mm-hmm. And the key to that is there's a power of 3 that's above my pay grade. I can't explain it. But, refer to their first name 3 times when you're talking to them.
Yep.
You know, Mary, I was in Phoenix, and we went over this place, and Mary, you would not believe, you know, but it's got to be pertinent information, but you're focused on repeating their name 3 times in that communication. That helps record it in the memory banks.
It does. It does.
And Donna, if you just met me, of course, first, well, we're going to admit the phone call that I gave her about the long-lost cousin. We're not going to talk about that. But anyway, well, I called her up on the way to Phoenix. I said, "Hey, Donna, how you doing?" She says, "Who's this?" And I said, "It's your long-lost cousin." She knew I was lying right out of the gate.
Right.
But if we met and I start telling you, and I say, "Donna," and I say something, and you know, Donna, and I say something else. And, you know, you tilt your head a little bit, which shows sincerity. And you know, Donna, if I mention your name 3 times, how does that make you feel?
It makes you feel important that you're talking to me and that you're addressing me by my Christian name. Yes. And that you have enough respect for me to bring me into the conversation.
Exactly. It's powerful. It's a win-win situation. You make the person feel good. It helps you, if you're like me with the bird brain, helps you write that down in your memory banks. You know, it's really important. And I had to learn that the hard way, because it's embarrassing when you can't remember someone's name, especially if they don't have something written on their chest, you know, the cheat sheet, as I call it.
And, you know, and I have been in that situation where I flat been talking to somebody and I have forgotten their name, and I just look at them and say, "Okay, you're going to have to excuse me, but I have completely forgotten your name. Could you help me out?" And I apologize in advance. And you know what? And that's okay, because it tells them that you didn't mean to, but you didn't remember their name. And then when they say your name, you say, "Now, how could I forget your name?"
Yeah.
Right. And then you make it on yourself. And then you go on and say, "You know, I feel so silly, Mary. I do not know why I forgot your name, but I can guarantee you, Mary, I will not forget your name again." Now,
reason I'm sitting here giggling, Donna, is because it reminded me one time when a person asked me, in fact, it was a lady. She says, "I am sorry. I'm trying to remember your name." I looked at her and I says, "It's George." And she looked at me, she says, "It's not George." And I started laughing. And then I told her, you know, of course it was Jim. And I just did that. I have a warped sense of humor, but I can't take anything in life seriously. I really can't. But I respected the fact that she was honest enough to say, you know, "I'm sorry, I forgot your name," because what Donna said there is very, very true. Have the courage to say, you know, "I meet a lot of people and I'm trying to remember your name, and please forgive me," you know, and they're not going to take offense to that.
No, and there's power in that, because you have truly you've truly let yourself be vulnerable.
Yes, that's the key.
You've let yourself be vulnerable, and that's important.
Yeah, because they too, I mean, you folks out there in TV land, have you ever forgotten someone's name? Oh, yes, you have. We all have. So everybody can understand that. And when, like Donna says, when you're vulnerable and you're honest, they will respect that.
Yep.
And because the unprofessional person, or the egotistical person, as I call them, they will go on saying what they're going to say, da, 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 and never admit to you that they don't remember your name, and they will never use your name if they're egotistical, because it's all about them.
Right.
That's why using a person's name is so critical in communication. So critical.
So, I'm sorry, Jim. Go on.
No. I'm out of words now. I got to get another thought.
Well, you know, one of the things I had spoke about just a little bit ago is providing feedback. So if there seems to be that disconnect, reflect what has been said by paraphrasing. "So what I'm hearing, Jim," or "as it sounds like you're saying," are great ways to reflect back. Don't simply repeat what the speaker has said verbatim, though you'll sound, you know, insincere and unintelligent. Express what the speaker's words mean to you. When you do that, what I'm hearing you say is, or this sounds like you're saying, when you do that, it adds such a value to that other person, right? That what they're saying is important to you, that you heard it and you've interpreted it in this way. And I've been in situations where people have said that to me, and I was like, wow, they were truly listening. You know, that is a really, really effective way to listen and engage with that person.
And on tomorrow's show, we're going to pick up with pay attention to the nonverbal signals. We're going to go more into that because it's definitely a skill. But also, too, when you're speaking to a person, the key words that's important to you, make sure you pronounce them phonetically, because that puts emotion into it.
Right.
And it also has some stickability. It shows them how sincere you are rather than just, talking the same tone or the same rate and all that. Slow down.
Right.
And that's very critical, because I'm reading here where they talk about the higher frequencies of human speech that impart emotion. You become attuned to these frequencies. And so that's what you want to do. You want to get people tuned into you.
Right.
And it's amazing how effective we are by the sound in our communication. Go ahead.
Case in point, it's amazing how effective we are with the sound of our communication. So when you emphasize that word, slow it down, but speak it just a skosh louder and slower. It makes a huge difference in your communication. And your audience is going to get more out of it.
Yeah, just like the name of our show, Messages of Inspirational Stories. But if I say Messages of Inspirational Stories, you can see how that, affects you, how you receive that. That's the point. How will someone receive, the energy when you pronounce a word phonetically? Just like it's spelled out in the dictionary, pronounce it like that. So that's and if you're nervous when it comes to public speaking, that's an excellent way to calm you down, because you're telling your brain, hey, what I'm saying is important. I was taught that by an old instructor, because when I first got in front of people, I was scared to death. I really was. And people are more afraid of public speaking than they are death. And not everybody's going to be a public speaker, but everybody's going to die. And more people are scared of that. But that is a nicety to know, to be able to get your message across in a sincere way. Use the power of pause and pronounce your keywords phonetically.
And if you have your speech in front of you and you're looking at it, as reference points, take your keywords and boldface them. Yeah. That way you will not forget.
Oh, yeah.
You will not forget by boldfacing them.
That's a good tip, because I used to take a yellow highlighter and highlight the words, because in the lessons plans that we have were created for us.
Right.
Because they, in any type of curriculum, when you're with an accredited school and you're a certified instructor, you're not going to roll your own up there, okay?
Right.
You're going to go by the book. But since I had my own manual that was given to me, presented, that was prepared by them, I would take a yellow highlighter and highlight the words that I wanted to, because that's a mental trigger.
Right. Absolutely.
And the less that you can, if the way you set yourself up is to remember as less as you possibly can, because you got notes that will trigger your mind, that will also calm you down and give you confidence and make you a more effective communicator. And absolutely. I know about what Donna's about ready to say. Go ahead and say it. I don't care. I'll just go away in a few minutes.
I know. We're out of time, folks. But, we're so blessed that you joined us today. And more blessed that we could be here to, host this show. It is our calling in life, and it is truly our passion.
It really is that. And Donna and I, we understand and we appreciate from the bottom of our hearts that you folks chose to tune in to watch our show, because you've got millions of choices out there now to tune into, but you chose to watch us, and thank you so much. We
Absolutely.
sincerely hope and pray that we have been a blessing to you today and maybe helped you and grow in a few areas. And tomorrow we're going to be back with more, on this very good topic. And if I remember correctly, where you are on our notes, we're going to start out with how a skill that pay attention to the nonverbal skills, because that
Yes.
will give you honest feedback from people.
It will.
100% of the time, the physical feedback is honest.
Yep.
I mean, like Donna says, if someone's sitting there and their arms are crossed, they've closed you out. They may not say it, but their body is screaming at you. We're going to focus on that tomorrow.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time, and we're sincerely hoping you enjoyed the show. Donna and I, we hope and we pray that you and your loved ones are healthy, happy, and blessed in all areas of your life. And be sure to love yourself first, and then you can love others, because you can only give what you've got. So love yourself first and realize you're okay. Realize that you were created perfectly to be you, an imperfect person. And as Donna likes to say, be sure and love yourself enough to give yourself.
Lots of grace, folks.
We all need it. We all need it. And like I say, thank you again for tuning in. Thank you for helping our show become more and more popular on E360 TV. Be sure and follow us on our Facebook page, Messages of Inspirational Stories TV show, by the same title, at our YouTube channel, Messages of Inspirational Stories. And if you need any information from us on a previous show or a question or anything, please email us at, I think I'm clicking and she's clicking. One of us is clicking. We're a couple of clickers here. We want you to email us at inspiration@e360tv.com, because one of our staff members will get it, and they'll get it to us, and we will get you an answer as quickly as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
So on behalf of Clicker Donna there and Clicker Jim here, we'll see you tomorrow, folks.
We're clicking off now. Bye, folks.